Welcome to Jay Vee Unplugged, live on the 815 News and Media Network. Sit back and grab some popcorn as we go unplugged.
We are live from the Hive. Today's guest, the first one on Jay Vee Unplugged, is going to be Collin Corbett. You're running for governor, man.
I'm honored to be the first guest on this. It's kind of exciting.
It is kind of fun, right? We had to get some serious time in here, so I'm glad you came down. We're always sponsored by Unbroken Family Counseling, and they it's cheaper than a divorce, they like to say. So give those guys a call over in Plainfield and schedule your appointment today. Let's just jump right into it. We're running kind of late here, so I want to make sure I get everything covered. First, obvious question, man. Why? You're asking the voters to do something they've never done in history, which is put an independent in the governor's chair.
Yeah. And I get asked all the time, like, how's this going to work? It never works. And I always make people pause for a second and say, well, when you say never, that it never works, when has it actually been tried?
Yeah.
Because I'm only the third independent candidate for governor in Illinois in 86 years. So this idea that this has not worked before, no, this actually hasn't been tried before. Now we're going to find out in November. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all the data that we gathered, and we gathered a lot of data, and other people have as well, that have shown that the country is moving towards being independent in their politics. In fact, at the end of last year, Gallup ran their numbers. They do it every year. And 45% of Americans had identified as independent at the end of last year. Only 27 as Republican, 27 as Democrat. Then CNN came out with their data just a couple months ago, and they were at 47% as independent. This is the direction the country is going as people get more and more fed up with the two political parties. And it's especially driven by Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, who are just rejecting the idea of this two-party system, which everyone agrees is not working.
It's been a problem, and I think it's so toxic. Jackie and I were talking about this before on the ride in here. Like, the political environment is so toxic. If I say something bad about Darren Bailey, I'm a liberal. If I say something bad about J.B. Pritzker, I'm a MAGA. And it's just nothing gets done. All they're doing is trading insults back and forth, right? And that's not going to solve any of the problems in Illinois, right? And I just think that they pick and choose what they want to attend. Darren Bailey especially. Darren Bailey and Elmar 100% pick and choose what they want to attend. And let's just get into that real quick. The forum that they just canceled, right? It had to be canceled because they didn't show up. What was the rules that they didn't want to adhere to, or what was the reasoning for JB and Darren not showing up?
Yeah, so it was a League of Women Voters forum that was going to be held in Peoria, but it was going to be broadcast around the state. So it was a great opportunity for voters to hear from all three of the candidates. And I think it was going to air on September 10th, I believe is the date. But the deadline for the candidates to agree was this past weekend. I was the only one to agree. And the League of Women Voters has always had the same rules. This is everyone knows it. If you're in politics for more than 5 minutes, you know what rules they put in place. It's more of a forum, not a debate. They like to keep it, really positive, where you're not attacking each other. They don't let you use the video or the audio from it. They control it, so you can't use it for gotchas or putting it up on social media. They want it to be they want it to be a genuine policy discussion.
Sure.
And I would imagine that's why the other two candidates didn't choose to participate, because on Darren Bailey's side, they don't really want a policy discussion. They really only want the one-liners, the gotchas, the viral social media posts.
Saying things like Doge Illinois. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but how do you put Doge in Illinois into effect? And that's the problem I have, is that no one has a plan. If we sit here and, like, I've said this a million times, like, show me the plan. And Pritzker doesn't even have a plan.
No,
he does not have a plan. If you go to his website, he's got absolutely no plan either.
That's what drives me crazy. And so even some of Pritzker's allies, when he gave his State of the State address this past spring, usually you say, this is what we're going to do for the next year. He didn't even do that in his State of the State address. He's literally running because he can win easily, and it's an easy launching pad for president. That's it.
And then he brings his lieutenant in to finish it.
No ideas for what he wants to do for Illinois, because he has no intention of being governor a third term. He's going to announce in spring of 2027 that he's running for president. Whether he wins or loses, if a Democrat wins the White House, he's going to be off in D.C. He's going to get some sort of cabinet appointment if he's not the person himself.
Absolutely.
So you've got a candidate for governor on the Democratic side who has no plans to be our governor. I mean, that's the absolute frustrating thing, is that's the Democrat candidate who also refused to participate in this forum. And then you got the Republican candidate who you mentioned. There's no policy depth there. There's no ideas. It's just the cookie. It's sort of the, hey, I'm going to put a 1% property tax cap out. I'm going to eliminate tolls. I mean, these are things that people go, yeah, it sounds great.
But you can't do it without the legislative.
Right. Then you say, okay, now how? See, I'm not willing to lie to the voters, But it seems like for them, it's anything in the pursuit of power is okay as long as you obtain power. And that's this path that they're on, that it's okay if they say it. This sounds similar to a certain presidential candidate. It's not a lie if I say it. And it's,
Right.
for the rest of us to go, well, how are we going to get there?
So, and I think that brings up another good point too. When you talk about there's a big hot button issue is the flock cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that look like? You're governor on day one. What can you do, right? Is that something that needs to go through the legislature? Is that something you can do by executive order? And what's your stance on the flock cameras?
Yeah, it is the epitome of what we just talked about, with the lack of policy depth out of, let's say, the Republican campaign, but then the lack of any interest in governing out of the Democratic campaign, because Pritzker has shown doesn't care, not touching it, not talking about it, just like property taxes and everything else. He's not his problem, it's his response. And then what you get out of Darren Bailey is on flock cameras, it's just ban them. And that sounds good. I mean, there's a whole deflock. I get it. There's a whole movement here.
Sure.
But that doesn't accomplish the goal of what those who are in favor of deflocking actually want. They don't want to live in a surveillance state, which I 100% support. Privacy is paramount. Privacy is a fundamental human right. I am strongly in favor of privacy. Simply banning one type of ALPRs does not achieve the privacy that you're looking for.
Right.
People have no idea how much they are tracked, and that's not an excuse. That is not an excuse to keep flock. I've got a whole answer here. Give me a second. But people don't realize how much they are tracked, to the point where when you watch an ad on your phone, the location data is shared with whoever served you that ad. So even just watching an ad on your phone, when you're driving around, that location data is shared with multiple entities. When you're downloading apps, playing games on your phone, all of that gets shared. I mean, there's so much that we do on a daily basis that is tracked and shared and sold and processed. And it shouldn't be. It's ridiculous. I used to work, so my company used to be, ironically enough, in 1871. I say ironically because Pritzker was involved with 1871 at the time. And there was a whole bunch of tech companies there. And so we learned so much about the tech world. And there was a company there that did, at the time, what was groundbreaking work, where they could crawl your email and predict when your fridge was going to break. And they would sell that data to the big box stores like Best Buy and others, so that before your fridge even broke, they would start to serve you ads about large appliances. Because apparently on something like that, I think the sales window is 72 hours because you've got food that's spoiling. Yep. So if a big box company only found out a day or 2 or 3 days after your fridge broke, the sale's been already done. So like that was over a decade ago that they could predict when your fridge was going to break.
So I'm in home services, and I work for big box stores.
Okay.
So I get exactly what you're saying, because some of the products that we sell, I know for a fact what has a 4 or 5 year lifespan on it, what doesn't. You know that, right? It's not being deceptive. It's just how the things go these days, right? But
So this is the world that we're living in. And the reason why I make that point, again, is not to make it a defense. Well, you're already being tracked, so who cares? That's not my point. It's simply to say that because we have so many privacy concerns, and we haven't even talked about AI and how, deep fakes, and you can make people say things and do things that they never did using AI. We have serious privacy concerns. And so just saying let's ban flock cameras is a really lazy way of approaching a very serious problem. We have to have a holistic approach to protecting the privacy of Americans. And yes, that comes with putting guardrails on flock cameras. No footage should be kept for longer than 72 hours. No one should be allowed to access that footage without the appropriate legal backing, legal allowance. That's how you protect people's privacy in the era of ALPRs and flock cameras, but it's got to go deeper than that. You should own your data. You should have control of your privacy data. There should be these people who process your private information should be required to give you a location you can go to opt out. Instead of right now, you've got to physically mail them to have them to remove your privacy data. And even then, they're not obligated to follow what you ask them to do. And that's just, they only have to delete. If they do delete it, they only have to delete what happened in the past. They can still collect more in the future, and then you got to mail them again. This is the era we're in, where it's your responsibility to protect your privacy, not these companies who are collecting, processing, and selling your data. These are the things we have got to change in our laws, and that's whether that's DC, but good luck getting them to do anything, or that's down in Springfield. These are the things we absolutely can do, and as governor, that's what I could pledge to do, is to protect your privacy. Let's not just do the easy one-sentence, well, ban them, flock flock cameras when there are some positive uses of those.
And this is a great point. I want to bring in, so I'm going to do this new thing on our show called Phone a Friend.
Nice. Okay.
So we're going to phone my friend.
I wish I remember that old Who Wants to Be a Millionaire
That's
music.
it.
We can play it.
I probably have it on some prompter on here. But Jackie is a good friend of mine. And Jackie, I think this is a great place to bring into the discussion of the flock cameras, because you've seen them on both sides of it. We were talking about this a little bit before I got here today, and over 50 police officers and have been either suspended, fired, something for abusing the flock system, right? And so what's your take? I mean, you've seen it from both sides, and I just want to bring you in and just kind of get what your take is.
So my introduction to the flock camera system, just to give some background, I was on a murder team because that's what we had in Will County when I was a prosecutor for 8.5 years. And there was a murder of a young 21-year-old boy in a driveway dropping off his girlfriend. We would not have solved that case. I don't want to say that. I don't like to speak in like overgeneralities, but
there's the attorney.
But for flock cameras or the technology, we would not have solved that case in such a timely manner. So that was my first experience with flock cameras. However, and I love that you, by the way, Collin, like I knew nothing about you before today. And I love so far what I've heard, I was really disappointed to actually vote in the election. I didn't realize that there was another candidate at this point, and Jay Vee and Darren are two very terrible candidates. I think anybody that is a billionaire in this climate should be ashamed of themselves, especially because you're not putting it back into the citizens that you claim to protect, that goes to Jay Vee. And then Darren, like, I agree completely with what you said. He has a lot of talking points, right? So I appreciate that you're doing the hard thing, because you're right. Nobody's ever done this. It's always been two political parties, or I should say largely two political parties. The issue, I guess, I have with the flock cameras, going back to all of this, I love that you say it's protect your privacy. I have an issue, personally speaking, when we put privacy before protecting. And it's not to say, it's all about whose hands the technology it's in, right? And it's tough because there's a balance there, right? And I understand that anybody coming into these systems, as you're taking on problems of the past while also trying to balance, growing for the future, right? And
so the libertarian in me
tough.
wants to ask, like, from a Fourth Amendment standpoint with these flock cameras, right? Like, are we walking the Fourth Amendment line, basically? Like, are we saying, hey, mass surveillance is okay as long as we're catching bad guys, but it's not okay to collect your stuff? Where did we draw the line at it? And I think that becomes a lot of the issue. Like, no one knows where to really draw the line.
Well, from a legal perspective, it also comes down to storage. I mean, a lot of this, you couldn't have predicted this back when you wrote the Constitution, obviously, that we'd have the technology that we have today. And so it comes down to, is a camera looking at you but not storing that? Is that one thing, versus if it's recording and storing permanently and now people can access that, is that a different thing legally? There's a lot here that goes into a legal world that I don't even pretend to be a lawyer on TV.
Sure.
But I do think Jackie's correct that the balance is important.
Lawyers make things more difficult, sadly. Like, I hate to say that because it was a profession I was involved in for 14 years and I stepped away from it a year ago. But, I saw during COVID, I have 2 little girls, and I saw during COVID technology, just expand exponentially, right? But the ethics around that technology did not expand with it.
Yep.
And that is so frustrating, because I feel like I live in it's a world that's full of duality, right? But like, I feel like I have one leg in reality and one leg in my bizarro world of hope for the future, because but right now, this world we're living in, it's not safe for children. Like, the technology is not safe for children. The streets aren't safe for children. Schools right now aren't safe for children, technically speaking. Like, it's sad because, like I said, the balance, it's tough. We live in a system that's very flawed right now, and I give kudos to anybody trying to, take a role in fixing it.
Well, Jackie, to the point you made about, first of all, you said balance, and obviously as the independent candidate who's mainstream. Balance is my word, so I'm all for that. But you mentioned something about how our laws haven't kept up, our lawmakers haven't kept up, and that's what drives me crazy is how reactive our politicians are, where they wait until something's on fire and then they say, let's form a commission to think about it for a few years.
I've always said that too.
And we know we are barreling into this AI-driven future, and we're aware of it. We know it. Everyone understands it, and yet we're not taking the time to actually prepare for that AI-driven future. And so whether it's flock cameras and privacy, whether it's, AI and this argument that we have to get there first before China does, we have to get to the singularity before China does it because we'll be more responsible. Well, and that's the idea that we'll be more responsible. Okay, if that's your viewpoint, then we got to be more responsible. Right. But I see AI barreling ahead, and our lawmakers just started to decide. They just a few months ago said, maybe we should think about a kill switch. Like, okay, because AI figured out how to get out of its box and find the internet when it wasn't even connected to the internet. Then lawmakers are like, oh, maybe we should take this seriously. Sure. So if your viewpoint is that we have to get there first because we're more responsible, well, then to Jackie's point, you have to actually be more responsible. Absolutely. And we haven't done that. Our lawmakers, maybe because they're all 80 to 90 years old now, I don't know, but our lawmakers are still going, well, maybe this AI thing is something we should think about.
Absolutely. And that gives us a good transition to this one too, Jackie. The Safety Act, right? Everyone, this is the big thing, the Safety Act. And if you hear Darren Bailey, he's like, I'm going to repeal it, I'm going to repeal it, I'm going to do this, but you can't do that without legislature. They've got a supermajority.
One thing I'd say is it depends on what day of the week you catch them. Because one day it's we're going to repeal it, and then one day it's no, we're not going to repeal it. It often depends on where they are. If they're closer to Chicago, they'll say they're not repealing it. If they're not closer to Chicago, they're like, oh no, day one, that thing's going. So you got to watch because depending on who they're talking to, you get a totally different answer on the Safety Act.
And I've always said that about them too. It depends on where they're talking or what they're saying is, and that's how it goes. And that's how it goes with Jay Vee Pritzker too. Like he's more interested in getting some kid to follow Bailey around to ask him who won the 2020 election than he is to stand back and say, hey, look at the state that I've kind of enjoyed fucking up for the past few years, right? Yeah. And so he does all of that, and then it doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us any closer to the goal line of getting some real change in Springfield. And so I honestly believe, and I'm not a political analyst, but I think that so few people who were behind Darren Bailey in the Republican primary, that's all he's got. I mean, how many votes did he get?
Yeah. Well, he had 4% of the registered voters from the primary.
But that's not going to cut it, and you don't have $50 million again either.
Well, I used to be a political strategist. I do my best now not to fall into that habit since I have 20 years of experience, and you get used to it a bit. But I can tell you just some free advice for the Bailey campaign. If you don't want the Pritzker tracker to keep asking you who won the 2020 election, you could just answer the question.
Absolutely.
Just some free advice. But
absolutely.
Beyond that, let's go back to your actual
the safety. Sorry, we get down the rabbit hole. Jackie loves rabbit holes too, so I'm surprised she hasn't jumped in here yet.
It looks like you want to. I can pause for a second. Go ahead.
All right, get in here, Jack.
Well, and I think that it's representative of a larger issue in America, right? Where people are living in survival mode, sadly. A lot of people it's work, breathe, work, sleep, breathe. And that's all they have the time or capacity for. And that's sad, right? We can't change that overnight. It's happened over decades. However, we have to start believing actions over words. That was something my parents taught me when I was very young. We believe actions, not words. And I get it though. People lack the capacity. And also, 60% of America has below a 5th grade reading level. And that's not me being a jerk or me being rude. That's facts. Yeah. Like we have illiterate individuals, because the less educated people are, the easier they are to fool. And that is so heartbreaking to me, because I would rather grow. I would rather we all be educated and not be extracted from,
Yeah. But as you said, right now, life is so tough for people. And I hope we get a chance, depending on your timing, talk affordability.
That's what I'm getting into next.
That's a really good question. But I want to make sure I don't be that politician. I see someone who commented that said they're sick of the politicians who don't answer questions. So for their sake, I want to be sure I actually answer your question about the Safety Act. And then we'll come back to it.
We're going to get into affordability in a second here, because I have some questions on that too.
Good.
Go ahead.
So when we talk about the Safety Act, what's interesting is, again, when you compare the approaches of the three candidates for governor, on Jay Vee Pritzker's side, what has driven a lot of people crazy is that he claims that he's open to common sense improvements to the Safety Act. He said it. You can Google it. He said it over and over and over. But then I can tell you that when anyone tries to move forward, any sort, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or just nonpartisan law enforcement, when they've tried to move forward to any kind of adjustment, even judges, Pritzker and those people who are part of the pretrial, I think it's called Pretrial Fairness Network, but I might be getting that wrong. The camera starts rolling, you forget things, but
Right.
it's they will then dig their heels in and say, no, don't touch it. Even though they agree, because we all know there need to be some improvements.
Well, and he donated $2 million to the Supreme Court justices too.
Well, that
$1 million
helps.
to one justice,
Yeah,
$1
that
million to the
helps.
other justice. You know what I
the
mean?
millionaire aspect does help a little.
Exactly.
But the thing is, and then you got on the Republican side, on the Darren Bailey side, they say they're going to repeal it on day one, which, as you already noted, they do not have the authority to do so.
Exactly.
So it's a lie. But even if they did have the authority to do so, it wouldn't be a good idea. It's whether you were skeptical or in favor of the move from cash bail, it's been clear that there are some positives of the lack of cash bail. The idea that people could, if they had the money to do so, buy their way out of pretrial detention when they are people who should not be let out in the streets no matter how much money they have. There is merit to that, regardless of how you feel about the overall move to this new structure. And so this idea of just throwing the whole thing out is also a failure. And so that's where, when it comes to my approach, it's let's sit down and make common sense improvements to the Safety Act, because I do agree, and again, some of us may have different opinions on cash bail, but I do agree that the move from cash bail was a positive thing, and I've said it for years. But what I don't like is that the list of offenses that are eligible for detention is so it's strict, it's limited. And so that's where our problem is. That's where we should be focusing on. And you've seen some examples of this. The DuPage County State's Attorney came out because there was an individual who was caught, I believe it was his third DUI. He had a young child in the back seat, and it was clear this was an individual that was going to continue to endanger there was a woman in the front seat with him. He was going to continue to be a danger to himself and others, but under the Safety Act, the DuPage County State's Attorney couldn't ask for pretrial detention. You had a situation in McHenry County where the State's Attorney there came out and said there was an individual who was caught. It was something like 100 times. I mean, it was a ridiculous number of times that they were caught shoplifting. And they even said when they were questioned, they were going to go out and do it again. Like, it's clear at this point that this individual should not be let back on the streets, but again, not eligible for pretrial detention. You've got a situation where all discretion has been pulled from your judges when these are elected judges, and most discretion has been pulled from state's attorneys, and that's led to people being put back on the streets who shouldn't have been put back on the streets. And so that's what we should be talking about, instead of the extremes of I'm never going to touch it, or let's just throw the whole thing out. Let's actually have a conversation and solve the problem. That's all I'm asking for. Is that too much?
Absolutely. Jackie, I know you're just chomping at the bit to get in, so come on with it.
Well, they came out with it. I think that a lot of times legislatures, they see a problem and I shouldn't say respond, they react by going the exact opposite way, right? And so then that's how we got the Pretrial Fairness Act. And I actually agree with it. I don't think that jails should be, indigent prisons of people who can't afford, or they can't afford their freedom. That's disgusting. And that's not the justice system I signed up for, at least. I understand some people feel that way. But they had category A and category B offenses. And if it was a category A offense, then you had to still fulfill the standard of, are they a harm to themselves or others that they should get released, And I got to say, especially with the volumes of evidence that are involved in prosecution nowadays, I feel as if, in 1961, the Illinois Criminal Code was 72 pages. And today, how many pages do you think that the Illinois Criminal Code is?
I'll just throw out there 150.
Over 1,000.
Sheesh.
And so it's like the glossary today is about the same size as how many pages it was back in 1972. I'm sorry, but no attorney knows over 1,000 pages. And also that's one foreign language of the law, the criminal code, right? And so we have hyper complicated, we have hyper regulated, versus looking at what the root cause of the problems are. And to a place where now, you see a pattern like I see a pattern, Collin, and we're not able to do anything because there is no leeway in trying to get someone held, I believe, under a category B offense. And again, it's been a while since I've, held people in jail. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's just very frustrating all around.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
And that when the bill, package of bills, but when that was all negotiated, I can tell you that Law enforcement didn't have a seat at the table. Judges, the judicial system didn't have a seat at the table. States attorneys didn't have a seat at the table. And so they made a tremendous number of errors in the drafting. Now, there's been, I believe, 3 trailer bills, some of which took feedback from good states attorneys and law enforcement professionals and judges. So there were already significant improvements from the first bill. But this is what always happens in Illinois. Instead of getting everybody around the table, let's have a discussion, let's figure out the best path forward, you end up with this bill that keeps 1 or 2 special interests happy, and then they say, well, we'll just fix it in a trailer bill. That may or may not happen. And we see with this obstinance from Pritzker and the people in this camp, they don't ever want to touch the Safety Act. So when you tell us we'll just clean it up in the trailer bill, but then you won't touch the trailer, do a trailer bill, then we're stuck.
Did you say the Safety Act is 750 pages long?
Correct. And like the way that they did it during a lame duck, legislative session. And it was disgusting. You handed out a few hours. How can anybody review it? But then why does our legal and legislative system set up to allow for stuff like that? Because you're not voting then on the issues. You're voting based on who's funding your pocketbooks, right? Like, and it's just like,
and I think that goes right into the data center issue, right? Like when you're looking at data centers, a couple things is that,
get me started.
Yeah, I know, but the data centers are an issue, right? Like everyone says they hate AI and data centers should go away. And I get all that, but you know what? Electric cars need to go away too. People don't like those either. It's just the changing times. If people can't equip with or change with the times, that's really on them. But the problem with the data centers, and here in Illinois, is that Springfield has taken the local municipalities' ability away to kind of veto things down. And what we saw here in Will County was the speaker in Will County.
Do you guys know in 2019, Illinois started like getting data centers? I can't think of the word that I'm looking for right now, but they advertised to data centers. They gave tax rebates to data centers starting in 2019.
Probably TIF. What's up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incentivized,
Well, and that's the thing is like, and it's about balance at the end of the day. I don't think AI is horrible. I think it's a tool to be used with discernment. Unfortunately, too many adults lack discernment in America, right? Like,
well, and that's what my wife's and my position on this is first of all, understand that data centers aren't just driving AI. They're driving all the technology that we use. So as was just mentioned, data centers, this is a necessary thing in the future, regardless of your position on AI. That said, my wife and I talk about this all the time, and I've shared a few times publicly that we have a higher level of responsibility than we ever did before. I'm that guy who, even when I was a Republican, I was a Teddy Roosevelt Republican. I was an environmentalist type Republican. I believe we need to protect our environment. And so, I look at my 2-year-old boy and the baby on the way, and I want to pass to them this beautiful earth that's a gift that we've been given. But back in the day, it was like, oh, did you recycle your plastic bottle? And does that really make that much of a difference? Not really, but I want to do my part. But we now have the ability. You want to have AI generate a 30-second video, a 1-minute video. These are intensive things that are burning up the resources of this planet in order to achieve. And so we're at a time now of heightened responsibility where you and I and everyone else has to take a personal responsibility for this. And that's what's scary here is AI can do amazing things. I have talked to some people who have shared the advances that are potentially on the horizon in the medical industry, in the medical field for humans and some of these diseases we've been unable to cure. There are massive things that AI can do to benefit humanity. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But if we're going to sit there and say, make a 60-second video of me dancing as a cat, is that really something we needed to burn our resources to produce?
Sure. And so I get eaten up a lot because I do use some AI stuff on our page and stuff.
You're right. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I don't get paid to run this page. You know what I mean? This is a freelance type deal. So I need the tools available to help me.
But you're using it as a productivity tool.
Exactly. Right? I'm putting my research into it. Like I was telling someone today in one of the comments, it takes 2 or 3 days. We get in there, we do our research, and then I just feed it to it for structure. You know what I mean? I don't have time.
And AI can be tremendously useful as an assistant to humans. That's okay. What I'm talking about is, the things that you can do, like there was a candidate who said, nailed my talking points and had AI spit out an image of them or a video of them dancing like Michael Jackson. It's like, did you need to burn resources for that?
Right.
Especially as somebody who's done politics for a long time. If you had danced honestly, even if it was bad, especially if it was bad, you would have gotten a zillion likes because people like those human moments. They actually want to connect with you.
Sure.
So you actually hurt your social media, whatever, the algorithm or how far you could have gotten it,
Collin,
and
that's
wasted
actually
resources.
how I prepared for today is I filmed a video of me dancing for my TikTok page before appearing on this, since JayVee gave me like an hour's notice, you
There you
know?
go.
So like,
That's how we roll
I
at the Hive.
appreciate that. It's about balance. And I actually have a point. I went and grabbed this book when you brought up Teddy Roosevelt. I love Teddy Roosevelt. I love what he did for this country. I think that he has set the example and the bar high for people who care to understand him. And this is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It was written 100 years ago, basically like 1930s, I want to say. But it's so sad because I've read this book a few times and I've had to put it back down. I think that, well, people are too set on the grow rich part of it in America. They forget about the thinking part of it. And that's when it comes, like when you say what you're using AI for, like, it just breaks my heart because like, it's a tool. It's a cool tool too, that should be used to, you know, I don't know, audit finances and government systems and see where there's gaping concerns.
Doge, Illinois
again,
Doge.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are tremendous uses for it. That's why I'm not anti-AI. There is certainly value that this can provide, and you know, it's inevitable. I think is the point. We all know that it's inevitable. There is going to be no stopping it here at this point. So now it's about how do you manage it and can you do so responsibly, which isn't happening, you know, and that's at every level. We keep running into this, that because of, here we go, shameless plug time, because of our broken two-party system, all of our politicians spend all of their time just simply trying to beat the other side. And meanwhile, we're barreling into this future that we're not prepared for, and nobody's talking about it because instead it's about, did I just own the Democrat? Did I just own the Republican? And we jump from election to election. There's no governing time in between anymore. And so none of this gets done. And I was not interested. I'm not the type who says, oh, look, I'm driving over the cliff. I'm just going to pop some popcorn on the way and enjoy it. I'm like, hey, maybe we should turn the wheel. Just a thought.
Well, and I think that just jumps back into the taxes and affordability of all Illinoisans. That's a big problem right now. And I want to make sure that we spend enough time talking about that because that is probably beyond Flock, beyond Safety Act, beyond data centers. That's the number one problem. You know, at what point, what's the number that looks like Governor Corbett says this is the number that needs to be reduction in the property taxes? You know what I mean? What would you do to kind of get families instant help if there is such a thing as instant help, right? And what does it look like? Yeah,
instant help is going to be hard. There's certainly some things we can do, and I'll share those here. Most of the help we're going to be able to get families of Illinois is going to take time. You know, we've got a plan over the course of roughly a decade to achieve what we all want to see, which is lower property taxes, ideally 1% or less of your property tax value. I absolutely want to get there, but you can't just snap your fingers. It will take a tremendous amount of effort to get there. We certainly could help people with high gas prices right now. You could, whether it's suspending the gas tax or capping it or giving a discount, you could do the same when it comes to the sales tax on gas, because we're one of, I think it's either only 3 or 4 states that double taxes people on gas. Which, you know, Pritzker and some of his allies are correct that the reason for high gas prices nationwide is not because of Illinois Democrats. It's because of the war in Iran. It's because of inflation. It's because of, you know, that's the reason for higher gas prices everywhere. But what they're neglecting to tell you is that gas prices in Illinois are in many cases 40, 50, 60 cents higher than gas prices in the surrounding states. And that is the fault of Illinois and Illinois government. And we could do something about that. So there's, especially because you've got a significant amount of funds right now in the road fund and construction fund. There's over $7 billion already in those funds, which is more than a year's worth of construction and our infrastructure in this state. The tollway has more than enough money, yet tomorrow they're probably going to raise our tolls. These are the things that we could do something about that would have a small impact right away. But the bigger impact's going to take time. We have a spending problem in this state, but I'm not going to pull a Darren Bailey and just say, well, I'm going to show up as governor and snap my fingers and immediately the budget's going to be cut. We're going to doge Illinois. That's not possible. What Darren either doesn't know or isn't telling you is that when you're elected governor, you have about a month to prepare and submit your first budget. That's it. That's not enough time, even for someone like me who's been doing this for 20 years, who tries to read every bill that I can, who looks at the budget because I nerd out on this stuff. There's no way you're going to be able to find every ounce of waste in a month.
Right.
And so you've got to be realistic with the people on what you can do. Our approach is to say, let's freeze non-discretionary spending. That we can do. And then over the course of that first year, we're going to put in place transparent accountability measures so you can see where your money's going. And then you can see where's it being spent well, where's it being spent poorly.
Sure.
And then in year 2, we can make more informed decisions about, well, we're not going to keep funding that program. It was supposed to be temporary during COVID. COVID's been done for years. Let's cut that. Those are the decisions you can make in year 2. But this is why it takes time. It's literally going to take a decade, but there are, so I don't drone on for too long, I'll stop here, but there are multiple things you can do along that pathway where you are starting to reduce people's property taxes. And over the course of the next decade, I know that we can do it, but it's going to take fiscally responsible leadership at the top, and it's going to take more than social media slogans to make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one problem that we do have is you've got with the Republicans that I've noticed from day one is just all the infighting. Like they can't get along to save their ass. And the reason why the Democrats are so strong and have been so strong is because they may be scandal ridden themselves, but they all stick together. They know how to raise money and it works for them. You know what I mean? Because they take their inner fights to the back room and they deal with it back there. And I'm not saying it's one way right or one way or the other, right? But like if the Republican Party can't get past that and only 4% of registered voters are voting for Bailey in the primary, what are we going to do? How are you going to affect change? He's going to go down there. He'd be another rounder if he got elected, right? I mean, just sit there. You got a super majority, but you really can't what's the word I'm looking for? Articulate any change because you don't have the legislature behind you.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with people that come out and said that one issue that I had with them, and they always double back on their words. And one of the things they said was that they were getting Aaron Del Mar involved because they wanted to win Chicago, win Cook County, win the northern suburbs. He's going to deliver them. That's why they have him. And now you'll see Darren say, well, we don't need Chicago to win. Mm-hmm. We don't need it. Well, but that's not the whole point. You know what I mean? Like they're so tied up in bullshit insults that no one's talking about policy. Mm-hmm. And that's the other problem. You know, you got people who can't afford to eat. These kids, they're going to be kicked off a SNAP or whatever. And I'm not a big welfare person. I don't think that the government should be everyone's bank account. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But there are people that need that help.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we can't ignore the people that absolutely need the help. And I feel like for talking points, they do that. They ignore people that need the help because they want to say that everyone's sucking off the system and it's a big scam and blah, blah, blah. Trust me, J.B. Pritzker has proven that he's got scandals written all over his administration, right? So that's not one of my issues. Presently, my issue is that no one's addressing that, right? We just kind of get into talking points and no one sat down here and had any. We've had Aaron Del Mar sit in the same seat. He didn't talk about any policy. It was just Pritzker's bad, fire JB. We're going to do this. Where's the plan?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've said this, I've used this phrase a lot lately, but the Republican Party's not my circus, not my monkeys anymore. And I'm grateful for that, to be honest. If they ever decide that they're serious about trying to help people in this state, I hope that they do. I tried for 20 years to get them to be serious, but I reached a point where I had a baby, I had a son. That's what changed everything for me. I couldn't sit around anymore and try to help what was a party that seemed to have no interest in winning, no interest in helping people, no interest in solving problems. That was all fun and games when it was just me and my wife and whatever, fine. But I got kids now. I got one here, I got one on the way.
I've got 5.
There you go. You get it. And so it's,
I do.
If you're not interested in solving problems, if you're not interested in bringing balance to the state, then I'm going to come up with a different way that we can achieve that, because I need my boy to be able to grow up in a state that supports his future opportunities, because the direction Illinois is going right now, I would feel like a bad father to raise my child in this state if we keep going on the path that we're going, because there's no future for him. There's no future for my second child. And so we've got to make changes, and that's why I've pursued what I've done. And I can tell you that I have had conversations with dozens and dozens, it might be fair now to say over 100, but to be safe, dozens and dozens of Democrats, uber progressive, more moderate, everything in between. And every single one said that they hope what I'm doing works. Now, not beating JB, because for those who don't know, I'm running against JB. I'm going to give it everything I've got to beat him. But this is step one in building this independent majority.
Absolutely.
What we're doing is continuing way beyond November 3rd. This is just the first step. And it's the long-term thing that they want to work, because they have said to me, that they will admit that governing only works when you've got balance, when you've got two entities. And the Republican Party has failed to provide any sort of balance in this state.
Yeah.
And they know that that's a bad thing. And so they hope that what I'm doing works because we need some sort of balance.
That's
in this
what
state,
Jackie
which
and I
we
were
don't
talking.
have.
That was the famous word that Jackie and I were using on the way over here today when we were talking on the phone was balance, right? It's all about having balance. Balance, and even in this conversation, right? Like when we have, actually, I was telling Jackie, like when we're sitting around the table and it's like four guys, I'm like, it's just so much testosterone, right? Like we don't have any balance. But you're absolutely right. You need to
By
have.
the way, speaking about that, you look at the 6 candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, the Democratic slate, 2 dudes. Republican slate, 2 dudes. My slate is the only one that is a male and a female. My running mate is the only female in this race, which, by the way, I remember during the Me Too days that used to matter. That we actually had female representation in our politics.
Yeah.
But apparently now that the 2 major
our
party
government
slates are
should
all
reflect
dudes,
the
nobody seems to
population it
care anymore.
represents,
Exactly.
you know?
What were you saying, Jackie?
The government should it should be reflective of the population it represents, and we have 80% above the age of 60 white male, you know. And it's not to say I love white men, right? Like I love men, but I don't think they should have an 80% say over what happens with my body. Like I created life twice, and if you don't understand or if you've never been through that, then I don't think that you should be deciding what happens during the childbirth process. You know, and it's just to say, give us a voice at the table. It's our table too, you know?
Yep. So you were making a point, but I just saw an opportunity to inject. That has not come up in this race, and it frankly kind of annoys me because we worked really hard to make sure we had a balanced ticket that brought different perspectives and different genders and different regions and different even ages. You know, that was important to us to bring that. And then, you know, we look at the other 2 slates and it's like, it's all dudes and no one's talking about that. No one's bringing that up. And I feel like that should matter when over half of our voters are female and the 2 major parties haven't provided them a candidate who speaks for them.
At any level, really, if you look at the Secretary of State or any of those, it's all men. You know what I mean? What's the last time that? What's up?
I have to say too, JayVee, you and I have talked about this before. I have the brain and the capacity for a government position if I chose to go that route. The fact of the matter is, it is very hard to be an educated female in this world and to put yourself out there, because the scrutiny against women is they attack my appearance. They attack me as they'll attack me personally versus, you know,
They're shooting the messenger, basically, right?
They can't attack my education. They come at, so like to put yourself out there as a female, it's hard. It's very hard because this is a rough world. It's a rough world for men too. I'm not saying it's easy for any of us, but I've seen like the scrutiny, and I mean, JayVee, you've started to see it now too. When you post something about one party, the other party thinks that, like, it's just there's
and that's why I had to put up a post.
Live their lives based in assumptions.
That's why I had to put up a post last night about, listen, I don't just because I said something bad about one Republican does not mean I owe you 3 bad articles about a Democrat. You know what I mean? I don't owe you anything. Like I don't get paid to do this. This isn't a job for me. But the other side of it is, if you want me to stop writing about one party, stop fucking up, stop screwing up, stop giving me news to write about then, right?
Well, that was my frustration in my podcast, was I'd always get that. Why are you going after Republicans, and why don't you go after Democrats? Which, by the way, I went after Democrats way more than I went after Republicans on that podcast because it was a Republican podcast. But I also said that my team at the time wasn't immune because we need to get better. And that was one of the many reasons why I left, was there was no interest in getting better. It was simply circle the wagons. How dare you say we're perfect, and how dare you say that? And if you've got a problem, say it privately. But when you said it privately, nothing changed. And to your point about picking, you're going to focus on the controversies. You're going to focus on the mistakes. And right now in politics, one party's winning because they're making way, way, way fewer mistakes, and one party's losing because they make 5 mistakes a day, and they have no interest in improving or changing that. You know, I've trained over 3,500 candidates around the.
Are they making fewer mistakes, or are they doing a better job of covering for themselves?
Could be a little bit of both.
That's my
but
issue.
both are skills.
I mean, that's what I've always said. You go back to Democrats and you look at, they are good at staying unified even when they hate each other. You know what I mean? Like that's just not something the Republicans can do. And you look at Tom DeVore and those guys, that's the exact issue of what they go after everyone politics. And they call themselves
But
grassroots, but I don't see a whole lot of
blanket
grassroots going on.
Well, and
agreement
there's-
is not always good either. Like there has to be healthy conflict. Conflict's not bad. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve.
Yep.
It's about how you present that. And I think that there's no such thing as civil discourse. There's no such thing as arguing with civility anymore. I mean, we've lost sight of respect and conversation.
Yeah.
It's a strange time, a dystopian time.
Well,
to
and
be
Jackie,
alive.
that's part of the structure of what we're doing is trying to be able to shine a spotlight on the good. Because when you're stuck in this two-party system, it ends up being a lot of look at how the other side is bad. And whenever I would dare bring up a bill or something that a Democrat had done right, I'd be called all sorts of names and a traitor and everything else because they're the other team. And now as an independent, I have the ability to work with anyone. I have the ability to promote anyone who's doing things the right way. And so as much as possible, other than my two opponents, because I am in an election, so I am going to hold them accountable. But beyond that, it's pretty rare for you to see me talk about either the political parties or any candidates or elected officials in either of the parties in a negative way. That exists. But there's groups like you who are going to take that on for me, and I don't have to. I'm going to focus on the good and the positive. And in recent weeks, recent months, I've pointed to a number of bills, a number of ideas that have been pushed forward by Republicans, by Democrats, by Libertarians, by Green Party, the Independence Party, and other groups that are really, really good ideas. And this, what we're trying to build here, provides us a platform to say best idea wins. Who cares where it comes from? And if you want to play that partisan game, that's cool. Republicans are over there, Democrats are over there, put on the jersey and have your fun. But this group over here, we're not wearing a jersey. We're just going to get things done. And if you want to join us, come on.
I like that. I think that's a good place to put the pause button on it. What
This
do
has
you
been
think?
the past 10 years, working on my concept of a plan. Like that's what government has been for the last
Jackie's
10
one of the
years.
only
And
people
I'm
that still
sick
reads
of people
paperback
working
books.
on concepts when we've had more than enough time to come up with policies and procedures to keep our children healthy and safe. I mean, I think I'd be able to fix it by brunch, but then again, I'd have to have people willing to listen.
Well,
So I appreciate.
And Jackie, that's a
that
foundational
you
point
doing.
of our structure here is we genuinely believe that if you get reasonable people around the table, you can come to a solution on every single issue. And I've
Absolutely.
tested this. Pick your most
It's not.
controversial of issues. We've brought up abortion and guns and immigration in the middle of when immigration was a massive hot button issue in Chicago. And I tested this and I'd bring people around the table and I kid you not, it never took more than 15 minutes. Like even people who they did passionately share their position and then they'd hear someone else and go, oh yeah, you're right. And well, could you account for this? And they'd go, oh yeah, I could accept this over here. And you just saw agreement and consensus happen naturally. I almost had to do nothing to make
It's
it
like
happen.
the old 90s, but we were back in the late 90s again,
Well,
right?
But this
guys,
is
I
a
think
fundamental
that's the
belief of
problem of
me and our
social
movement
media.
is let's get reasonable people re-engage with politics. The fact that over 3/4 of our voters back on March 17th chose not to participate, most of them because they felt like their vote didn't matter. They felt like they couldn't make a difference. They couldn't change things. We've got to get them back to the table. Let's get everybody back around the table because once you do that, you don't push away the extreme voices. You simply drown them out. Right now, when they are a majority of the voices who are involved in politics, because very few people are involved with politics, they have all the power. But you bring 100 more people in the room and suddenly you're not going to hear that extreme voice anymore
Sure.
because there's 100 normies around them. Like this is the idea is let's get people re-engaged, back engaged, and that's how we can fix our broken politics.
I love it.
You have to take away the keyboards and the screens because we've made it so easily to dehumanize other human beings from behind a screen and behind a keyboard. And I tell you, people have such big egos and, big words projected from their bellies when they're behind a screen, but I know they'd never say like half the things to my face. And that's sad to me because I don't think that the technology, it kind of goes back to what we were saying, like technology is all about whose hands it's in, but it's also a reflection or a mirror of the current society we live in too.
I mean, I'm gonna let you have the last word here.
All right. I like it. I think, it's let's go here. I understand what I'm asking people to do. I understand that in this state, independents, third parties, this hasn't been done as often as it has maybe in other states. And so in this state especially, I'm asking people to do something that they've never even thought to do. But if we're going to change all the things we just talked about for the last roughly hour, It's not going to change within the current broken two-party system. There's no world in which you get a Darren Bailey and a few other Republican statewides to win and 40 state reps and 20 state senators, and now suddenly Springfield's going to change. Electorally, all those things I mentioned, every single one of them is impossible, let alone all of them together, is not going to happen. What I am providing, and the many people who are helping build this and bring together this independent majority, what we are providing is a actual attainable path forward that could fix our politics. One that is realistic, one that over the next 2, 4, 6 years could actually be achieved. And so I know that this is different. And for some might even be hard to do. But at the end of the day, we've got to step back and say, is what we're doing working? In this state of Illinois, after I've been doing it for 20 years, many have been doing it for longer, is it actually working? Is it changing? Is it getting better? The answer is no. And if you want to be that NASCAR driver, that race car driver who says, I'm never going to pit stop, I'm just going to give it everything I got, and then you blow a tire because they're bald and your car flips and you possibly die. Okay, you feel better about yourself because you never took a pit stop, but wouldn't it be smarter to pop in there, get fresh tires, get the gas you need, and get out there and go hit it as fast as you possibly can? That's what I'm providing. We're not giving up. We're simply saying what we were doing before isn't working. Let's take a pit stop. Let's be smarter because we absolutely need a better direction and better leadership in this state. That's what we have to agree on. And you know what? If that means changing the color of the jersey or the word that we use, the name that we use, but still being able to put forward common sense, reasonable policies to the public that are, mainstream policies, I don't care what label we use. I simply care, are we putting forward things that make people's lives better? That's what I'm asking you to do. I know it's unique. I know it's different. I know I might have to ask you this November and then again in the future because it's going to take some time, but I'm signing up for that. I'm only 40 years old. I'm going to keep pushing at this because it's time we did something better in this state. My kids demand it. Your kids demand it. And let's actually give the public something better instead of just whining about how we lose every time.
I love it. Well,
Collin, I have to say I didn't know anything about you. What I've heard so far, I like. I'll obviously have to do my own investigation, but
I feel like as a prosecutor, that's a requirement.
We the People platform, and I like that. It's not like independent. You're not being hyper independent, every man for themselves. It sounds like a We the People platform, and I love that. Yep. So thank you.
And that is the point. That's when I say this has not been done before, I mean it. We're not just running as one independent candidate. I'm not running as half Republican, half Democrat, some mushy middle kind of a thing. We're putting out actual policies. We're going to put out an actual platform. We're pulling together a majority and an organization. This has not been done before. And that's the point people need to realize is we're going to actually provide a home for people who feel like right now they have no political home.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you guys both coming on for our inaugural show. Not annual, Jesus, I can't even talk today. For our inaugural show, it's been great. We're going to do this again. We're going to check in with you later on down in the fall here and see what's going on, see how close you get, and we're just going to keep an eye on everything. It's going to be fun, man. I'm excited to see independent people coming out and saying, "Hey, none of this is working on the right or the left."
This gives me hope for the election. I'm not, like I said, I didn't know that. Like I'm a retired attorney. Don't categorize me with them anymore. But I didn't realize you were running. It does give me hope for this election. So thank you.
Well, and hence our slogan, "Hope for Illinois." Look at that. It's magical how that works.
I love it. All right, guys, we'll see you guys later. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And next week I got a special guest coming on. I just don't know his name yet. Have a good night, everybody.